Bueno, en Centro Fox generamos y promovemos ideas con valores culturales, integrales y humanistas, con el objetivo de impulsar líderes de calidad orientados al servicio a la comunidad. Acompáñenme a ver el siguiente video.
En San Cristóbal, Guanajuato, se encuentra la promesa de una experiencia que cautivará tus sentidos. Soportado por techos del siglo XIX y arcos de ladrillo, en un escenario típico de la colonia mexicana se levanta Centro Fox, un lugar dedicado al desarrollo social que ha encontrado en las huellas de la educación, la innovación, cultura y la ciencia el camino para disminuir las brechas de desigualdad y en su lugar formar líderes con pasión, comprometidos con el México de hoy. Centro Fox es el epicentro del conocimiento. Foros y encuentros se dan cita en este recinto que entre sus espacios alberga el Museo y Biblioteca Presidencial, donde los visitantes pueden conocer los momentos más trascendentes del primer gobierno de alternancia en el país y consultar los más de 25,000 volúmenes que se guardan en sus estantes. Con iniciativas como orquesta, coros y ensambles comunitarios de Centro Fox y el programa Presidente por un Día, se busca impulsar el conocimiento y desarrollo de las comunidades para delinear nuevas formas de construir sociedades más incluyentes y equitativas. Fundación Vamos México y Crisma, perfilando la empatía y el servicio como hilos conductores de estos cambios sociales, Fundación Vamos México y el Centro de Rehabilitación Integral San Miguel de Allende Crisma se encargan de tejer lazos para crear comunidades solidarias a través de la suma de esfuerzos para transformar vidas y dar cobijo a las esperanzas de las personas menos favorecidas. Programas de salud, conocimiento, desarrollo y orientación se ofrecen como apoyos para generar un mayor impacto social que se transforme en oportunidades. Oportunidades que se financian a través de los eventos que se realizan tanto en San Cristóbal Center como en Hacienda San Cristóbal. Ambos como el motor económico que empuja este proyecto de vocación social que también se sustenta con donativos. San Cristóbal Center, favorecido por la templanza de un clima que se propaga en el ánimo y se contagia a los visitantes, está San Cristóbal Center, un recinto histórico que alberga en sus dos espacios la promesa de un evento inolvidable. Congresos, cenas de gala, seminarios y eventos corporativos han tenido como entorno este mágico lugar. Estos mismos espacios han recibido a grandes personalidades como el Dalai Lama, Deepak Chopra, Elton John, Juan Gabriel. Más adelante, enclavada en el pintoresco pueblo al que debe su nombre, se encuentra la Hacienda San Cristóbal, un hotel que no ha sido alcanzado por el bullicio de la ciudad, pero sí por personalidades como los reyes de España o el expresidente George Bush, quienes han recorrido estos pasillos construidos en 1614, donde los ecos de los movimientos independentistas y revolucionarios aún resuenan. Más de uno ha quedado fascinado en este remanso de paz que te envuelve como lo haría un buen ritual que se vale de los remedios mexicanos para equilibrar cuerpo, espíritu y alma. Centro Fox, Vamos México, Hacienda San Cristóbal y San Cristóbal Center comparten un lugar cuyos muros contenidos de historia aún tienen espacio para guardar la tuya.
Bienvenidos a su casa, Centro Fox. Pues muy buenos días, es un placer estar con ustedes el día de hoy. Le damos la más cordial bienvenida a CannaMéxico World Summit 2019, un evento organizado por Centro Fox, Chiron y Cosmos CBD. CannaMéxico nace por la necesidad de iniciar una cultura canábica responsable y sostenible, que ayude a potencializar las oportunidades de esta tan fructífera industria. Este es el momento de crecer y conectar. Serán 2 días muy intensos. Tendremos especialistas que nos compartirán todo su conocimiento sobre cannabis. Les recuerdo que tenemos 5 ejes temáticos: Legislación y Regulación, Ecogrowth, Medicina y Ciencia, Seguridad y Eficacia y oportunidades de la industria. También tendremos diferentes actividades durante estos 2 días. Conferencias magistrales que se llevarán a cabo en el escenario principal, la zona Expo que está aquí adelante, las CannaTalks que van a estar variando en el escenario principal y en el auditorio, y los talleres para que se inscriban en la zona de la arquería. tendremos networking y muchas sorpresas. Por favor, síganos en nuestras redes, estamos como CannaMéxico Summit y no olviden etiquetarnos con su hashtag CannaMéxico. Bueno, este evento no hubiera sido posible sin la participación de nuestros patrocinadores, a quien no podemos dejar de mencionar. Chiron, Global Extracts, High Times, Bella Green Ventures, Electrum Partners, Helix, Dixie Brands, Gowling, Canaccord Genuity, Extreme Cubes, Casares Global, Zimmer Global, BMO, MNP, Cardion y Island. En esta segunda edición tenemos una sorpresa para todos ustedes. ¿Quién vino a la primera edición de CannaMéxico? Poquitos. ¿Y el resto es la primera vez que vienen? Los veo muy serios. ¿Ya tomaron café? ¿Están emocionados? Bueno, ya más. Va a ser un evento padrísimo. Quiero ver más sonrisas, más ánimo. Bueno, les quiero platicar de una sorpresa que tenemos que se llama Canna Economics. Este va a ser un libro que vamos a sacar con 30 historias de impacto económico de la industria canábica en América Latina, donde los key players nos podrán compartir sus experiencias, cómo esta nueva industria y sus distintas verticales están transformando el mundo, generando riqueza y derrame económico. Si les interesa participar, estoy seguro que acá hay más de 30 historias que van a súper llenar de emociones el libro. Por favor, pasen a nuestro stand de CannaMéxico. Agradecemos la presencia del ingeniero Arturo Nieto Sánchez, director general de Estrategia Económica y Comunicación de la Secretaría del Desarrollo Económico Sustentable de Guanajuato. También, un aplauso, por favor. También agradecemos a todos aquellos que han sido parte de este gran proyecto. Álvaro Torres, Chris Napra, Vicky Puccini, Adam Levine, Julio Sánchez, Leslie Boxer, Zachary Venegas, ahí voy, Max Trumsten, Michael Basley, Adrián Casares, Douglas Gordon, Michael Aston, Maruf Raza y Terras Lynn y David Elsley. También agradecemos la presencia de Canex, BVE, Data Stars, MG Biz Daily y Retail House. ¿Todos los conocen? ¿Sí? Están muy callados, eso me preocupa. ¿Todo bien? Bien. Bueno, muchísimas gracias de verdad a todos nuestros patrocinadores, a todo el board member, los inversionistas, speakers, talleristas, expositores, medios de comunicación, participantes por acompañarnos en esta segunda edición de CannaMéxico. De manera muy especial les agradecemos. A nuestros anfitriones, la señora Marta Sagún de Fox, presidenta de la Fundación Vamos México. Y al licenciado Vicente Fox Quesada, presidente de Centro Fox y ex vicepresidente de México, a quien solicitamos nos acompañe a compartir con nosotros su mensaje de bienvenida. Un fuertísimo aplauso, por favor.
Muchísimas gracias, muy buenos días, bienvenidas, bienvenidos a esta su casa. A esta su casa, el Centro Fox, primera biblioteca presidencial fuera de los Estados Unidos. Bienvenidos a San Cristóbal, esta pujante comunidad agropecuaria y de agronegocios. Y bienvenidos a esta reunión de CannaMéxico. Quiero primero decirles que nuestra dedicación en Centro Fox es al liderazgo. Y quizá por eso mucha gente se pregunta por qué Centro Fox y el presidente Fox está involucrado en el tema de cannabis. Y la respuesta tiene que ver precisamente con lo que ustedes representan. Cada uno de ustedes son líderes, cada una de ustedes es un líder y su presencia aquí lo demuestra y sus actividades y participación en el espacio de cannabis lo deja más claro, porque sumarse a esta industria se requiere de visión, se requiere de coraje, se requiere de entendimiento y se requiere de pasión. Eso es lo que representa un líder. Muchos líderes a lo largo y ancho del mundo están activamente construyendo esta nueva industria que representa un verdadero paradigma, que representa recoger una planta, una hermosa planta que es la planta de cannabis o marihuana, quitársela a los criminales, a los ilegales, a quien han utilizado esta maravillosa planta solo para causar daño, solo para causar violencia, solo para causar muerte. Hoy esa planta es arrebatada y se está poniendo vía el proceso de legalización en manos de gobiernos, en manos de empresarios, en manos de industriales, en manos de agricultores, en manos de académicos, en manos de la ciencia, y es una verdadera revolución que estamos llevando todos a cabo en crear este nuevo sector económico, este nuevo tema de salud para mejorar la calidad de vida de las personas. Es pues una tarea excepcional. Todo está creándose nuevo. Vamos a recorrer y estamos recorriendo caminos pristinos, caminos que la humanidad no había recorrido antes, salvo hace mucho tiempo, donde todavía no venían a ejercerse las prohibiciones. Así que es verdaderamente motivante, lleno de entusiasmo, el que estemos participando aquí. Por esto, Centro Fox ha tomado esta tarea de ser el eje en México donde se va a generar la información, la educación, los conocimientos, donde va a haber seminarios, entrenamientos, capacitaciones, donde va a haber investigación. Aquí mismo, en los terrenos del Centro Fox, se va a instalar un invernadero de la más alta tecnología, estado del arte, para producir la planta y a la vez investigar sobre la misma, continua mejora permanente de ir buscando nuevos usos de esta planta maravillosa, que hoy ya está en muchos lugares, muchos productos que están cumpliendo ya una función. Queremos explorar también aquí el tema de México y su participación. Como sabemos todos, Canadá recientemente pasó a una aprobación nacional total de los dos lados del cannabis, el lado medicinal y el lado recreacional. Repentinamente, Canadá, por la visión de sus dirigentes, se convierte en el líder mundial de esta industria. Y sé que hay mucha gente aquí muy importante y relevante de los Estados Unidos que tiene aprobaciones regionales y locales, estado por estado, y que van extendiéndose en el ramo médico ya a una buena cantidad de estados, acercándose a 30, y que van extendiéndose en el lado recreacional de la misma manera. Pero mientras Estados Unidos no dé el salto a lo nacional, mientras la ley federal no siga la ley local y estatal, la industria ahí, si bien por los entusiastas inversionistas, por los entusiastas empresarios que están promoviéndola, no pudiera ir más lejos. Así que esta es la gran oportunidad de México. México puede dar un salto cuántico por demás importante en esta materia y convertirse en esa segunda nación con más de 100 millones de habitantes, con una economía potente y fuertes clases medias, en ese otro país que va a ser un motor, una máquina de impulso a esta industria. Hay pioneros como la empresa Chiron o Quirón, que también se le llama, empresa colombiana, dirigida por millennials, por ejecutivos jóvenes de gran visión y que están moviéndose a toda velocidad para extenderse a nivel global. Cuando la oportunidad se presenta, es cuando los líderes saltan a la arena y hacen su tarea. Esto es pues lo que vamos a repasar el día de hoy aquí. Va a ser sumamente interesante aprender, tal como sucedió en la Ciudad de México hace apenas un par de meses, una reunión con todo el gremio médico del país, los más relevantes participantes de la industria de la salud y médica en México estuvieron ahí. Y mi sorpresa fue que ellos, siendo eminencias, cada presentación que se hizo decían: esto yo no lo sabía, esto yo no lo conocía. Entonces, desde Centro Fox y en asociación con CannaMexico, vamos a hacer una difusión profunda de conocimiento para que llegue a todos los rincones del país, para que los miles, decenas de miles de médicos del país conozcan los productos, los entiendan y los asimilen y los utilicen para mejorar en muchas facetas la salud de sus pacientes. Así pues, ¿qué puede ser más excitante que participar en una creación, en una innovación, en algo que es un cambio nuevo y revolucionario? Y eso es lo que vamos a hacer aquí en este ejercicio. Por último, les diría yo que Centro Fox se ha comprometido en esta tarea y el presidente Fox, su servidor, porque vemos con tristeza la muerte de decenas de miles de jóvenes en las calles de México. ¿Cómo es posible que alguien pueda seguir pensando que la prohibición, que el uso de la fuerza, que el uso del ejército sea la manera de resolver este problema? Violencia no va a terminar con violencia. Necesitamos inteligencia, necesitamos creatividad. Y por eso yo he estado de activista por 10 años, participando en todos los procesos de legalización en distintas partes del mundo, porque tengo la convicción total que este va a ser un gran paso al frente para quitarle el tapete del dinero a los carteles y a los violentos, para darle oportunidad a esos cientos de miles de jóvenes que están trabajando con carteles, que están jugándose la vida día con día. No merecen ese destino, merecen tener oportunidades de trabajo, de escuela, de educación legales. Y por eso esta nueva industria ha probado en cada lugar donde opera esta transición, este tránsito de quienes estaban del lado ilegal, del lado criminal, cómo pasan a formar parte de una nueva industria legal, creadora de empleos, generadora de riqueza, sobre todo generadora de salud y finalmente generadora de paz y de tranquilidad. Mi reconocimiento a todos los players de esta industria. Es increíble el alto comportamiento ético y moral en que cuidadosamente estamos asegurando que esta industria no solo cumpla con las leyes, no solo cumpla con lo que esperan los ciudadanos, sino imponernos todavía una vara más alta de fuerte responsabilidad para hacer las cosas como deben hacerse, para no lamentarnos el día de mañana que esta industria pudiera fracasar. Fluyen pues muchos recursos de talento, tecnológicos, monetarios, y está en nuestras manos ejercer esos recursos para bien de nuestro país, para bien de nuestra comunidad, para bien de nuestra familia. Así que bienvenidos, nos honra que estén todos ustedes aquí y señalarles que estaremos repitiendo CannaMéxico año con año y recibiéndoles a ustedes para seguir progresando en este pujante nuevo mundo económico en el que todos estamos participando. Muchísimas gracias y bienvenidos.
Muchísimas gracias por sus palabras, licenciado Vicente Fox. Pues sin más preámbulo, démosle la bienvenida a nuestro primer speaker, Dr. Russo, neurólogo e investigador en psicofarmacología y director de investigación y desarrollo del Instituto Internacional de Cannabis y Cannabinoides, una eminencia en la investigación global acerca del cannabis. Un fuerte aplauso.
Buenos días. Es un gran honor de estar aquí con ustedes. Gracias a Presidente Fox y los organizadores. Voy a continuar en inglés. The title of my talk is ¿Dónde estamos y hacia dónde vamos? So, I will be speaking very fast. All of this material is contained in articles that I would be happy to send to you. My email is on this slide, and I think I am easy to find on the net. So we are talking about cannabis. Cannabis sativa means cultivated cannabis. If you were on a desert island and needed to choose one plant to sustain your life, this would be the best choice, because it provides food from the seed, fuel from the seed, fiber from the stalks to clothe yourself, as well as pharmacy, the chemicals from the plant that make it a medicine. And it is the unfertilized female flowering tops that are most important for this. We have discovered something called the endocannabinoid system. These are cannabinoids within our body. We would not know about this for many years later if it were not for the study of cannabis, because the plant makes these chemicals in the flowers, particularly THC, that resemble natural chemicals within our bodies called endocannabinoids, anandamide and 2-arachidonoglycerol. And these act on receptors in the body, particularly in the brain, but throughout the body, that affect every aspect of our physiology, how our bodies work. This is one of the most important regulators of those systems. It is important that you understand that cannabis is an ancient medicine, and this is a representation in various languages. I will just point out a couple. The fourth one is in Chinese, which is a pictographic language. And what you see are stalks of hemp hanging upside down in a shed to dry. And at the bottom, we have the representation in Greek. And you notice that in Greek, the accent is on the first syllable as opposed to Spanish. So we say cannabis rather than cannabis. Different parts of the plant have different amounts of the cannabinoids. And again, the unfertilized female flowering tops are the richest source. They put all their energy into try to become fertilized, but we prevent this to make sinsemilla. When the plant is fertilized, it is thinking about the next generation and puts more energy into the seed, but there are fewer cannabinoids. So we interfere with this process. We do not see any cannabinoids in the seed. There's very little in the stalks and almost none in the roots either. But those also can be very important for other purposes. Cannabinoids and terpenoids, the aromatic parts of the plant, are produced in what are called glandular trichomes, trichomas in Spanish. And the best ones, the biggest ones, the largest ones, are in the female flowering tops. They're also in the leaves, but these tend to be smaller and the chemical contents are quite different. But again, various parts of the plant have uses. And this is a slide that shows the seeds in particular. We'll have a talk about their nutritional value later, but they have a high quality protein and essential fatty acids that are one of the most complete single foods available to us. And again, in the roots, no cannabinoids, but other interesting chemicals that have therapeutic uses. This is the biochemical pathway by which the cannabinoids are produced. In the middle, you will see the two most important, the precursors, the parent compounds, called olivotolic acid and geranyl pyrophosphate. Generally, in the plant, the cannabinoids are produced as acid compounds, and most often, after they're heated, there is a loss of carbon dioxide, what's called a decarboxylation, to produce the more familiar THC, tetrahydrocannabinol, and cannabidiol. But the acid forms of the plant we are finding have medical attributes of their own that are also very important but distinct from THC and CBD. A little bit about THC, the most familiar psychoactive component of the plant. It took until 1964 to positively identify this, Professor Meshulam and his team in Israel. It is a weak, partial agonist at the CB1 receptor, the same as anandamide. So this is a system that works in a very subtle fashion. It needs a gentle nudge rather than a hard push, which often comes from synthetic forms of cannabinoids. Of course, THC is a pain-reducing chemical. It also reduces itch. It can open up the airways of the lungs. It's a bronchodilator, and cannabis was previously used to treat asthma. It also is what's called a neuroprotective antioxidant. That means that it protects the brain from insults, such as strokes or head injury and things of this sort. On its own, THC is 20 times as good as an anti-inflammatory based on potency as compared to aspirin, and twice that of hydrocortisone. And it's a very prominent muscle relaxant. This is the reason that a drug called Sativex is approved to treat spasticity, muscle tightness, in 30 countries around the world. It also prevents vomiting after chemotherapy. It does all these things without producing a lot of side effects aside from intoxication. It's not a COX-1 or COX-2 inhibitor like the non-steroidal anti-inflammatories that can produce ulcers, heart attacks, or strokes as side effects. And just another thing that's very important with our aging population is we're seeing marked increases in the amount of dementia, Alzheimer's disease. And THC has a mechanism to actually to prevent the buildup of toxic chemicals in the brain in that disorder. Cannabidiol also does this. It is not an intoxicating compound. However, it is strongly anti-anxiety and also antipsychotic. It's been used to treat schizophrenia. It was identified in 1940, but positively in 1963. It has an interesting effect in that it doesn't act directly on the CB1 receptor with THC. It influences it in a different way and reduces the binding, changes the binding of THC. Now that might, you would think, make it less effective as a medicine, but the two together work in synergy because cannabidiol is also a strong painkiller, but it reduces side effects produced by THC, like rapid heart rate and anxiety. It also is a very powerful neuroprotective antioxidant. There's actually a patent in the United States for this purpose, even though it's considered a forbidden drug. It also works on the same receptor that chiles do. Capsaicin is the hot ingredient, the piquant ingredient in chili peppers. And this is important in treating nerve-based pain. Some time ago, it was not known how cannabidiol affects anxiety. We had the idea that this could work through another receptor, the serotonin receptor, and when we investigated, this proved to be the case. It also is the basis of its effects to reduce nausea. A major influence of cannabidiol is to increase the amount of anandamide, the endogenous cannabinoid, in the brain and elsewhere in the body. Now, there are a lot of misconceptions about cannabidiol. As opposed to THC, it's not very potent. This just means that you need a higher amount, a number of milligrams a day to exert its best effects. You will often hear that it is sedating. It is not. Pure cannabidiol is actually alerting. Some people in California use it instead of coffee. However, most types of cannabis, chemical varieties, chemovars of cannabis that have high CBD also have a lot of myrcene. Myrcene is a terpenoid that is sedating, particularly combined with THC. So this creates a misconception that CBD itself is sedating. Even though there is an approved drug called Epidiolex now in the United States made of cannabidiol, all other forms of cannabidiol, like from the plant, are still forbidden drugs. Right now, there is some considerable use of cannabidiol, but technically under the federal law in the United States, it's still a forbidden drug. Another one that has come up is that some people think that cannabidiol turns into THC in the body. This does not occur. This is another misconception. This is just the pathway of CBD from the hemp plant to the glandular trichomes through the precursors to make cannabidiol. And as it says at the end, this is converted in the body to another chemical, 7-hydroxycannabidiol. It's not turned into THC. Another receptor we haven't mentioned yet is CB2. This is not a psychoactive receptor. So even though THC works there, if you had a drug that worked on CB2 but not CB1, it would be pain reducing and antifibrotic. It could reduce cirrhosis of the liver or other scar tissue formation. These are important effects. And there is such a compound in cannabis called caryophyllene. Again, a terpenoid that has no intoxicating properties. Now, because it's a natural compound and pharmaceutical companies cannot patent it, they're trying to make synthetic drugs of their own, but so far it has not worked for them. Sometimes nature does it better. I'd like to say something about land races. Land races would be types of cannabis that have been grown in the same area for many generations. So they are acclimatized to the weather, to the pests, to the local conditions. And you've had many of these in Mexico. I hope that they still exist because they would diversify the gene pool for cannabis. What we've seen worldwide is that the land races have been largely supplanted by seeds from California and seeds from Holland that tend to be all the same thing. High in THC and high in myrcene. They produce a condition called couch lock, where people can't move. And if that's what they want, that's fine. But cannabis has much more to offer medically. And we need to develop these land races to make cannabis safer and better. A little bit about the species controversy. We've mentioned cannabis sativa. Most authorities think that cannabis is one species. In the 18th century, Antoine Lamarck described what he thought was a different species, Cannabis indica. And you see the picture on the right. It was a bushier plant, but with narrow leaflets. We use these terms, sativa and indica, today in a way that is scientifically invalid. They're really meaningless. People will say that sativa produces a head high and indica produces a body high or stone. But you cannot look at the plant and tell what its chemical contents are. We need laboratory tests for that. And we should be thinking in terms of the chemical profile of the plants and the effects that it will have on patients. This is what is really important. A little bit about different techniques of administration. Of course, smoking is the most popular, but there are problems. Even in places where cannabis may be legal, people don't want to be exposed to the smoke, and so it's often illegal to smoke. Inhalation is a very rapid method of application. It's the same as intravenous administration, which we do not normally do or recommend. Because a lot of cannabis today is very potent, even one inhalation of a concentrate may be too much, particularly for a patient where the idea is to produce symptom reduction, such as in pain, but hopefully without producing side effects like intoxication. The main problem with smoking are the effects on the lungs. It does produce what are called polyaromatic hydrocarbons. These are products of burning, of combustion, and they are carcinogenic. Now, it is true that smoking only cannabis does not produce lung cancer because various components of cannabis combat cancer. But your body still has to process this material, and it's not helpful. So alternative techniques are an advantage here. Beyond that, we know that smoking produces cough and phlegm and bronchitis and is not recommended as the best technique for patients. Because of all these problems, it's unlikely that regulatory bodies such as the Food and Drug Administration or Health Canada will approve smoking as a prescription product. Better is vaporization. So this is boiling off the cannabinoids and terpenoids without burning the plant. This is one such machine called the Volcano because of its shape. And you see the different temperatures and what it looks like. At the highest temperature, it's toasted, but not quite burned. So this is an advantage. It clearly reduces the irritation of the lungs. However, no study so far has shown the elimination of those polyaromatic hydrocarbons. And if the plant has been fertilized with artificial fertilizers, it may produce ammonia in the vapor, which is toxic to the brain as well. So there are still issues, although this is an improvement over smoking. Then there are other ways to use it. In tinctures, we have the buds. This is an old picture when it was a popular idea to produce candy bars that looked like commercial ones. And these were very attractive to children. And you can imagine how law enforcement did not like this idea. A survey was done several years ago about how patients applied cannabis. And although things have changed since then, you'll see that smoking was the most popular among 72%. And as of 6 years ago, only about half the people had tried vaporization, and only about half of them preferred it. We've seen a big movement in the United States and some other countries towards cannabis concentrates, such as in vape pens. And at that time, very few people were using orally, but we now have more preparations, and this would be a preferred technique for patients because of its longer lasting effects and sparing problems with the lungs. One could question why you need chemical extraction of cannabis to make concentrates, because there are old techniques such as making hashish by filtering the trichomes or rubbing the trichomes off, and it is possible to produce a material that has 60% cannabinoids or 60% THC just from that material, which would be very, very potent. But there's been a movement, particularly in the United States, towards cannabis concentrates. Where I live in Washington State, about 60% of people will buy these. And there's no denying that a vape pen is an easy thing to use and produces a very rapid effect. But there are problems with concentrates as well. Usually they have to be extracted with some kind of solvent that is flammable or even explosive. In some parts of the world, what is called Rick Simpson oil, he recommends using naphtha, which is a petroleum distillate, which can be quite toxic, and it is not necessarily the case that you can get rid of it. And in trying to get rid of it, many people may get burned or produce an explosion, so this is dangerous. We know that the cannabis concentrates, even users will acknowledge that they have built up a tolerance. They have to use more and more and have bigger problems because of it. If someone is going to have withdrawal effects from cannabis, it's much more likely with a high potency material where someone has built up a tolerance. These really are not suited to treating patients. We need smaller amounts, again, that will reduce symptoms without producing intoxication. Some of these materials are very viscous, like tar or wax. Under these conditions, you can see that the vape pen, when you press the button, it becomes red hot. So in fact, in many instances, this is a type of burning rather than vaporization. However, there are better technologies being applied, and some vape pens can turn down the settings so that it's a much lower temperature, which is going to be much safer. Again, some materials, if the material is too thick to vaporize, it may be cut with solvents such as propylene glycol and glycerol. This is commonly the way that nicotine is used in a vape pen. This was a study done with vape pens for cigarettes. However, when those materials are heated too high, they produce formaldehyde, the same thing that's used to embalm people after they die. And this is a carcinogen. So I do not recommend those types of preparations. And again, we do not want to overheat the material because of its dangers. Different preparations have different levels of purity. Nabiximols, or Sativex, is the form of cannabis that is approved in 30 countries. It has equal amounts of THC and CBD. And you can see on this thin layer chromatography the amounts of THC and CBD. And it's similar to what is in Moroccan hashish or keef, what they call soap bar in English. But for the resin extract of this Moroccan material, you see all these other bands, and those are contaminants. So that could be wax, it could be camel dung, it could be hair, things that you do not want to inhale. To make a prescription, a pharmaceutical out of cannabis, requires an incredible level of quality control and consistency within very tight parameters. And we see here a representation of 25 batches of nabiximols taken over 9 years. And in the main peaks for the cannabinoids and the terpenoids, there's very little variance. Normally, standards for herbal medicines require that the components vary by plus or minus 10%, but that's now being changed to plus or minus 5%. So it has to have the same kind of consistency that a synthetic drug would have to be approved as a pharmaceutical. This is what are called the pharmacokinetics of different methods of using cannabis. This is how fast it gets into the blood. So you see the plasma concentration on the left and what happens over time. And you see that with smoking, you get a very rapid up and down peak. And same thing with vaporization. This means that it comes on quickly, but it will also offset quickly. So for the medical user, they will need to dose this every 2 to 4 hours. Whereas with Sativex in the green line, there's a very slow contour, and people often can spray this in the mouth 2 or 3 times a day and get a sustained benefit on their symptoms. So again, for most patients, this will be an advantage. This is also information about Sativex. One of the concerns is, does it produce tolerance like the opioids, morphine will? So in the top, we see a year and a half, about 75 weeks, and the doses, the number of sprays of Sativex used per day. In fact, it's steady or even goes down a little bit. So people with stable conditions don't find an increasing need over time. So this is exactly the opposite of what we expect with an addictive drug. The other concern is, will the drug make me high? In the case of Sativex, which is absorbed some through the mouth and some through swallowing, in the bottom column, you see comparison of Sativex or nabiximols in the level of intoxication compared to placebo. 20 on this scale would be, I feel different in my brain. 80 is what people would want if they're looking to be high. So someone who's smoking to be high would want 80 or above. With these, we see single numbers and no different from placebo. So unless someone takes too much too fast, they generally won't feel intoxicated. And for most patients, this is their aim, to feel better but not necessarily high. Now, I'm going to be presenting some slides from a recent article I would recommend to you. I would be happy to send to you. It has been frequently said in a criticism by doctors that I can't recommend cannabis because I don't know what to tell people to use, how much, what kind, etc. So we wanted to address this, and Caroline McCollum and I wrote this article about dosing and administration. So we'll be presenting from that. We've already talked about the different modes of administration, so I really won't read this, but this information is available and has the figures on how long it lasts, how long it takes effects, and the different problems that accrue with those. This, which I'm not going to be able to read, but fortunately I remember, is levels of evidence for cannabis-based medicine. The most important form of evidence, and the only thing that's usually accepted by the regulators, is what's called the randomized controlled trial. That means we've compared the drug to placebo, and it's shown superiority statistically as well as being safe, effective, and consistent. So it is proven that cannabis in the right form, nabiximols or Sativex, is approved for treatment of spasticity and multiple sclerosis in 30 countries. In Canada, it's also approved for treatment of pain and cancer. So that's the highest level of evidence. The same is true for Epidiolex, the form of cannabidiol that's approved now in the United States, but not yet elsewhere, for treatment of severe forms of epilepsy, Dravet and Lennox-Gastaut syndrome. So that is proven as well. We also have a very high level of evidence of the benefit of cannabis on nausea associated with chemotherapy or use in AIDS. Then there are lower levels of evidence for cannabis in treating inflammatory bowel disease. We have now 2 phase 3 clinical trials showing the benefits of cannabidiol in schizophrenia. But we know that people use cannabis for many other disorders, but having thousands or even millions of people who say that it works for them is not enough to provide the evidence. It's what's called anecdotal by the critics. Until we have randomized controlled trials, the regulators and most physicians do not accept this level of evidence just because patients say that it helps them. Obviously, we worry about adverse events, side effects. These are probably going to be familiar to most people. First is intoxication attributable to THC. So that can produce a feeling of being high, out of control, anxious, even crazy, feeling crazy if people have too much. And then for smoking, we have the cough and phlegm again. Rare things, fortunately, but something I would warn about is orthostatic hypotension. This happens a lot with these cannabis concentrates. Even people who are used to cannabis might take one inhalation of a concentrate and their blood pressure drops and they can faint. They can hurt themselves in the process and scare people and often end up in the hospital. So this is a serious side effect that's avoidable. Another thing that can happen if someone's not accustomed to cannabis in particular is what's called toxic psychosis. This means with a high dose of THC that they go crazy temporarily. Fortunately, it doesn't last. People can be talked down. In a few hours, they're usually better, and it does not make them schizophrenic on a permanent basis. Now, with pure THC in the drug called Marinol, that can happen with as little as 15 milligrams of THC. In the development program for Sativex, there was a study done to show that there were not toxic effects on the heart from the material, and they insisted that very high doses, 18 sprays of Sativex, be used at once. Keep in mind, the top dose, after people get used to it, is 12 sprays a day. So this is a very high dose, 48 milligrams of THC at once. But only 4 people out of 250 had a toxic psychosis, and they all resolved this. So when THC is present with cannabidiol and other components of cannabis, it induces a safety margin. It increases what we call the therapeutic index of the material, because very few people taking pure THC will tolerate it. Additionally, we know that the best dose of cannabis is the lowest one that improves symptoms. In the blue bars, you see from the Sativex program what happened in the early studies in multiple sclerosis, where high doses and a rapid increase in dose were allowed. You see that the blue bars are higher in terms of the side effects, particularly dizziness, fatigue, sleepiness, nausea. But when a lower dose was used, which became the recommendation, we cut these side effects in half or better. So the lowest dose that reduces symptom is the best dose. Just a summary of this part. How much a patient needs is an individual thing. It might depend on their prior experience. You can't measure it because they're a small person or a big person. You have to try it and see. We advise to start low and go slow. In general, a dose of 2.5 milligrams of THC is a threshold dose. Many people will feel it, a few do not. 5 milligrams is a moderate dose. 10 milligrams is too much at once for most people. But we don't recommend going over 30 milligrams total a day of THC for a medical patient, with the exception of situations where someone's trying to treat cancer primarily, where very high doses may be used. And I would emphasize that patients should not confuse psychoactivity with efficacy. What this means is they should use enough of the material to reduce their pain or other symptoms, but hopefully without producing a lot of side effects. In terms of physicians advising patients, most places in the world, I hope now, it is allowed for doctors to discuss cannabis with their patients. In the United States, they cannot prescribe it. They can only recommend it. This is a distinction. I believe that this should be put in the chart. It should be done with a complete history and physical, not be done in a 5-minute encounter or over the telephone, because it needs to meet the standard of care. It is incumbent upon us to show that we can give this medicine effectively and safely to patients. It's the only way that we will gain credibility. I'm going to just talk briefly about special cases. Epilepsy. You will hear that THC can cause seizures. This is extremely poorly documented in humans. It is true in rodents at extremely high doses, but at conventional doses, THC helps prevent seizures. Cannabidiol does not produce seizures in people or rodents. And again, it's been approved as a medicine in the US and hopefully other places. Other components of cannabis also reduce seizures. We have CBD, we have THC, we have THCA, CBDA, linalool, another terpenoid. So all of these things can produce a more broad spectrum product. What we have seen is that Epidiolex, which is pretty pure CBD, requires very high doses. Those doses may be as much as 80% lower if other components are present. So it likely will not be the last medicine approved for treatment of epilepsy. Cannabis is frequently used by cancer patients, either to reduce their nausea or their pain, but we know that cannabinoids in very high doses can kill cancer cells, but are safe for normal cells. So there's been a tremendous amount of interest in this. There were 2 phase 2 clinical trials showing benefit of Sativex in cancer pain, but the phase 3 trials did not work out. It worked in Americans. It didn't work in the rest of the world because the patients in the rest of the world were much further down the road, much sicker, and it was too late in the course. So my feeling is we know that this works. It was just hard to show in the clinical trials. Generally speaking, very high doses of cannabinoids are needed to treat cancer, and so a patient may have to titrate, adjust their dose upwards very slowly over a period of 2 weeks or more. But a very interesting result that hasn't been published yet happened with Sativex in conventional doses. 12 sprays a day, that's about 32 milligrams of THC and 30 milligrams of CBD in conjunction with a standard chemotherapy drug called temozolomide. This is very important. Some people make a mistake if they think that they will kill their cancer with just cannabis. Our best evidence is that it combines very well with other types of treatment, chemotherapy or radiation therapy, and improves the patient's chances to survive. Hopefully this will be published soon. The reason it hasn't been so far is because many of the patients are still surviving longer. So every day the statistics get better. So they're waiting. Pain. Cannabis is a great drug for chronic pain, particularly neuropathic pain, nerve-based pain, where opioids work very poorly and actually can make things worse. However, cannabis is not a good drug acutely. It's not good for a broken leg or after surgery unless combined with other drugs. The best evidence for treating pain has come from combined treatment with THC and CBD, what we call type 2 cannabis. How about use in the elderly? Well, we always worry that they will need a lower dose. This hasn't proved to be the case. Cannabis preparations, particularly Sativex, have been used quite safely in elderly populations and with no evidence that they had more side effects than younger patients. However, we want to be careful. Many elderly patients are on multiple drugs, there could be interactions, and elderly patients are subject to falls. So it should be adjusted very slowly and carefully. Parkinson's disease is a special case. To be honest, we don't know what works best. The most impressive results have actually occurred with raw cannabis that was eaten, so likely was due to tetrahydrocannabinolic acid rather than THC. But there was a delayed effect. It took up to 3 months to see the best benefit. So this one needs more research. I mentioned Alzheimer's disease previously. Both THC and CBD can interfere with the pathological process, the buildup of toxic chemicals in the brain that happens with this. But additionally, cannabis is very helpful for the symptoms of Alzheimer's disease, where people get agitated, particularly at night. They may wander, they don't sleep, they get very anxious, but all of these symptoms can be well treated by various components of cannabis. We also think that another component, alpha-pinene, can improve memory, which is the hallmark of Alzheimer's disease. There's a loss of acetylcholine, the neurotransmitter that's the memory molecule in the brain. Pinene prevents the breakdown of the acetylcholine and boosts its levels in the brain and can help improve memory. There are conventional drugs that do this, but they don't prevent the degeneration of the disease. We hope, but do not know yet, that cannabis-based treatment could arrest the progression because of the neuroprotective qualities. I've mentioned schizophrenia before. There have been 2 phase 2 clinical trials of high doses of cannabidiol. We also know that patients who have psychosis tend to use a lot of cannabis because it makes them feel better. So some combination of tiny doses of THC with higher doses of cannabidiol may be the best approach to this. But again, we need more research on these other preparations. So far, in recent times, there's been very little investigation of cannabis in pediatrics. However, in the 19th century, it was used routinely in children, and it was noted that they were very tolerant of the side effects. They could use doses of cannabis that an adult would not tolerate. In fact, children under 10 don't seem to get high. I think they're naturally high, is my opinion. But other components, certainly cannabidiol and the acid forms, have proven very beneficial, particularly in agitated children with degenerative diseases. This is fine print, but my colleague Bonnie Goldstein is a pediatrician that has used cannabis extensively, particularly to treat autism, where frankly we have no conventional drugs that work. She's used different combinations of cannabis-based preparations and had good success so that the children are calmer and often will be able to learn much better. Another forbidden territory is treating women, particularly women of childbearing age, with cannabis. Again, in the 19th century, some of the most common uses of cannabis were in obstetrics and gynecology. In modern society, we're deadly fearful of this, and that's unwarranted. We all know that women are not so delicate. They're tougher than men, and if they need cannabis, it should be available. Most people will not recommend cannabis in pregnancy. That's good advice, but the dangers actually are minimal. Many conditions in gynecology are temporary. A good example is hyperemesis gravidarum, the most severe form of morning sickness. Women get hospitalized with this. The regular drugs don't work. They can lose their babies, and women still die of this. Many cannabinoid components are exquisitely able to treat the nausea of pregnancy. And the danger to the mother is minimal. The danger to the fetus is minimal. We need to be doing this and show that it works. But additionally, such common conditions as endometriosis should be extremely amenable to treatment with cannabis, and this research needs to go forward. How about the patient that's using too much cannabis or is addicted to opioids? Can they use cannabis medicinally? The answer is yes. For the patient who might be taking too much cannabis, it's possible to resensitize them. My colleague Dustin Sulak will have patients stop their cannabis for just 48 hours, 2 days. Then he has them resume at half the dose and finds that it's just as effective at treating their symptoms as a higher dose had been, and saves a great deal of money as well. When patients have an opioid use disorder, it's been very well established now that cannabis produces an opioid sparing effect. This is to say it allows a lowering of the dose, particularly in treating pain, and many patients can withdraw their opioids entirely. Another neglected area is psychiatric treatment with cannabis. We usually hear that cannabis causes psychiatric problems. Well, it does not have to, because things as common as anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress, schizophrenia, almost any psychiatric disorder can be amenable to treatment with the right cannabis-based preparation. Here I have some suggestions on what I think different combinations of preparations might be best suited to treating a specific disorder. The problem is, again, most cannabis out there is high THC and high myrcene. We need to have better breeding for these other components so that we can have more therapeutic uses for cannabis. Now, I'd like to shift gears, and I hope I'm doing okay on time. What should we be studying? For clinical research, pain is always the most common condition treated with cannabis, and inflammation too. There are a lot of specific conditions that haven't been studied in formal randomized controlled trials, so there are plenty of opportunities. So this includes arthritis, whether osteoarthritis or rheumatoid arthritis. The inflammatory bowel diseases, Crohn's and ulcerative colitis, as well as the full range of autoimmune conditions can be treated with cannabis. Although we associate cannabis with increased appetite, other components like cannabidiol or tetrahydrocannabivarin actually reduce appetite and can be used to treat the metabolic syndrome and type 2 diabetes. There's the whole area of dermatology. Cannabinoids work great on the skin, even for such conditions as common as acne. I've mentioned the psychiatric conditions. A very important area would be treatment of dependency on other drugs. We have many studies now showing lower doses of opioids or benzodiazepines in patients who go on cannabis-based treatment. And then there are certain techniques that could reduce the need for cannabis by optimizing endocannabinoid health. This is done by exercise and diets that reduce inflammation, prebiotics and probiotics. On the basic science side, we need better breeding, as I've mentioned, looking at the genomics of cannabis to find out how different compounds are regulated in their production, and getting the best ratios of components that are more therapeutic. We want to be able to grow cannabis in a safe way. You have to have soil without heavy metals. We should have no pesticides. We want it to be free of bacteria, etc. One of the biggest problems, however, is resistance of insurance companies and the medical hierarchy, if you will, that still is resistant to the concept that cannabis can be a safe and effective medicine. Maybe we need a few more of those people to retire. What do I see for Mexico? You have a wonderful opportunity here. You have wonderful sun, you have wonderful soil, you have people with a tremendous work ethic. You have a tradition of growing cannabis. I hope the land races are still out there. You have scientists now that are doing excellent work on the basic science. You have capable and interested physicians. I see a great future for this country in moving forward in cannabis research. And I'm hoping that you will be the leaders that teach us in North America the true path towards development of cannabis as medicine. With that, I will thank you. Muchas gracias.
Súper interesante. ¿Tomaron nota? Vamos a tener un examen al finalizar CannaMéxico. No se crean. Bueno, les quiero informar, rápido corte comercial, de los espacios y las actividades que vamos a tener para que estén informados dependiendo de su boleto. Esta es la velaria donde estamos en este momento. Después está la zona Expo. Después, pasando la zona Expo, a mano izquierda está la escuela de música. Ahí va a haber el networking VIP. El auditorio está pasando el redondel, que es el casco que está a la entrada. Y más adelante tienen la arquería. Los que tienen boletos con talleres, por favor pasen a la arquería para registrarse. Estamos teniendo actividades simultáneas, entonces para que estén bien atentos. Y bueno, ahora sí, démosle la bienvenida a un gran amigo, Sam Caster. Sam es fundador de la empresa Manatech. Él comenzó a trabajar en una avanzada tecnología de aceite de cáñamo y acaba de presentar una patente de dicha composición, la cual nos va a platicar en este momento. Un fuerte aplauso para nuestro siguiente conferencista, Sam Caster.
Thank you. Buenos dias. Very good to be with you today. I would like to thank the organizers of CannaMexico and the Foxes for inviting me to speak on this year, 2019, subject of innovation. And we are talking about the commercialization of cannabis-type products all over the world. And I think cannabis lends itself to one of the most dynamic opportunities for impacting 21st century healthcare. And what I'm going to talk today about is the innovation within nutritional intervention for how to facilitate the best technologies for that work. There I am. Okay. Well, I am Sam Caster. I'm the CEO of a company called Evolve Health. And at Evolve Health, we are a social business. And I'll explain a little bit more about that in just a moment. But what we specialize in is nutritional compositions, nutritional innovation, to address the biggest health concerns that people face worldwide. Social business is a new model of doing business that not only provides innovative new technologies to consumers around the world, but has a purpose greater than just financial rewards. And that is that every time we sell a product, it allows us to make a donation of the same type of advanced technologies to the world's most vulnerable children. That's our social business platform. And we distribute advanced immune supporting technologies to children all over the world who would never get access to this level of nutritional intervention without this kind of activity. And of course, we have distribution partners all over the world to help us facilitate that. And we're proud to say that we are linked with Vamos Mexico right here at the Fox Center and meeting the needs of thousands of children right here in Mexico. So that is our profile for business, and I'm going to talk to you today about what creates sustainability for our social business effort. First of all, I'm going to talk about, you know what, I think I'm just doing something wrong here. There it is. So, in looking at the world's best technologies for impacting human health, it led us to the cannabis technology. It's an up-and-coming technology in the United States, of course, and all over the world. Part of it has to do with all the new science that is coming out to support why the cannabis plant provides such incredible support to human physiology. And of course, we know that in the 1990s, it was discovered that in human physiology, as the previous speaker talked about, we discovered the endocannabinoid system. And the endocannabinoid system is a series of receptor sites that sit on the cells of our most critical functions in human physiology. And it's divided up into two different types of receptors, CB1 and CB2 receptors. And these receptors help monitor what is called balance in the human body. And what we're looking for is the ability to impact things like in the brain memory, mood, sleep, pain sensation, and create homeostasis that helps manage all those metabolic functions in human physiology. CB2 receptor sites are necessary for managing energy, balance, immune function, metabolism, all the anti-inflammatory responses in the human body. And supporting the endocannabinoid system nutritionally comes from a plant called hemp. And hemp is full of these, as the previous speaker said, phytocannabinoids. Phytocannabinoids turn on and off these receptor sites in the endocannabinoid system. And the hemp plant makes over 100 different phytocannabinoids that help support this function. It's also been discovered that there's other molecules in the hemp plant that facilitate better activity of those cannabinoids, again, in this function of supporting the endocannabinoid system. When you look at the commercialization of hemp, it's basically talking about three different types of extracts. First of all, the extract of cannabidiol, the prominent cannabinoid in the hemp plant. And when you extract cannabidiol, it is called CBD, and it comes in the form of isolates. And that's very prominent in the marketplace today. You see CBD oils, CBD-infused food products, and it's an isolate of one individual cannabinoid called cannabidiol. The next thing you'll see from a commercial standpoint is what is called full-spectrum hemp oil. And full spectrum is everything that exists in the hemp plant. It's over 100 cannabinoids, it's the terpenes, it's the flavonoids, it's all of the composition of the plant, which also includes THC, as you just heard from the previous speaker. THC in hemp is only at a level of about 0.3%. But that's what full spectrum hemp oil contains. Then you'll hear the term broad spectrum hemp. Broad spectrum hemp is exactly the same thing as full spectrum, only without THC. So it's an extract that, first of all, takes the entire composition of hemp and extracts THC from that. So that is broad spectrum hemp. What we're learning through science and innovation is the value of what is called the entourage effect. So while hemp cannabinoids have taken the early limelight in this whole cannabis industry, we're now learning that other molecules like terpenes actually help facilitate the utilization of those cannabinoids in human physiology. And that is what is called the entourage effect. In fact, recently studies have shown that terpenes, one of these other molecules in the hemp plant, are exceptionally effective in helping carry cannabinoids across the blood-brain barrier. So again, the entourage effect is proving to be a very effective strategy for getting efficacy from the plants. Also, we're seeing peer-reviewed journal articles come out basically validating the efficacy of the entourage effect. So this is an article that was published in Frontiers of Neurology on September 12th, 2018. And basically what it's looking at is the comparison of using CBD isolates versus full-spectrum hemp oil. And this was done on quality of life improvements in treatment-resistant epilepsy. So in other words, these are children that don't respond to medication. And as you can see, it's a meta-analysis of 11 different studies, including over 670 children. And half of them were given CBD and half of them were given full-spectrum hemp oil. The group that were given CBD had about a 46% improvement in all of their symptoms of epilepsy. The group that got full spectrum hemp oil received a 71% improvement, showing that the whole entourage effect is a very effective strategy. But here's what's even more important. Look at the average intake of the participants. CBD isolates required 25 milligrams a day to get that reduction of 46%. And those that were taking full spectrum hemp oil only used 6 milligrams a day to get almost twice the efficacy. So again, we're seeing good science to support that the entourage effect is not only real, but very efficacious. The next level of scientific research in terms of innovation comes from what is called bioavailability. In other words, in order for cannabinoids to work in the human body, they have to be absorbed into the bloodstream. Swallowing 25 milligrams is useless if none of it gets into the bloodstream. That's called bioavailability. And we know that the bioavailability of cannabinoids is very low. These are very large, fat-soluble molecules that are very difficult to digest. And so when you swallow CBD, you get about a 4 to 10% absorption rate. It goes through the digestive tract, it goes through the first pass of the liver, and by the time you get through with all of that, it's about a 4 to 10% absorption rate. The next thing they found is that by holding it under your tongue for maybe 1 to 2 minutes can enhance that bioavailability or absorption rate maybe 2 or 3 times. So maybe now you're getting 15 to 25% absorption of either CBD or full spectrum by holding it under the tongue. But again, you're wasting 80% of the total intake of cannabinoids even by holding it under your tongue. So what is the innovation in science that has helped us get better efficacy, better bioavailability? It comes through a process that is nano-sizing these large molecules. So it's an emulsification process. And you can take the size of these large fat-soluble molecules from 2,200 nanometers down to 25 nanometers. So 1/100th of the size. And by emulsifying those new small structures, you can make them hydrophilic. Hydrophilic means they bond to hydrogen. In other words, they bond to water. So now they become water compatible. And water is absorbed readily in human physiology. So now the absorption rate goes from 5 to 20% to almost 90% through this new process. So again, science is opening the understanding of how we can make small amounts of cannabinoids much more bioavailable, which translates to much more efficacious in human consumption. Great new science, breaking down those molecules. Now I want to talk about the third level of science that I was actually asked to talk about, which is how do you create symbiotic effects with these new structures of cannabinoids? In other words, how do you combine two different molecules in nature to create better effects? You know, the father of pharmacology was a Swiss physician by the name of Paracelsus. And Paracelsus in the 1500s said something very profound that we use as our mantra for creating innovative strategies. He said, everything, not some things, everything that man needs to achieve and sustain health is provided by God in nature. It's the job of science to find it. And so that's what we do. We look for, first of all, the most efficacious molecules, and then we look for the symbiotic effect of combining those into compositions that radically change human physiology. And what I'm going to talk about today is the combining of cannabinoids with a unique molecule that comes from the aloe plant called ace-mannin. Everybody's heard of aloe vera. Aloe vera was the cornerstone of ancient medicine because there was something in the fresh gel of the aloe vera plant that caused an immune response in the human body that has never been seen, not only in nutrition, but in medicine. It is a very dynamic effect. No one knew what it was, but that was the effect of aloe vera, which is why it became known in the world as the #1 plant for supporting health and healing. The aloe vera industry, in terms of product production, became a $5 billion a year industry in the early 1980s. And all of the products were proclaiming to have the miracle of aloe in their product. There was only one problem. When you tested those products, it showed no immune response. So a group of investors hired a group of research pharmacologists at Southwestern Medical School in Dallas, Texas, to break apart fresh aloe vera gel to determine what is that molecule. And it turned out to be a long-chain polysaccharide that they named ace-mannin. Ace-mannin was an abbreviation of its chemical structure. It's an acetylated beta-1,4-mannin. You shorten that to ace-mannin. They also found out it was labile, which means if you don't stabilize this polysaccharide within 24 hours of the time you pick that leaf, the activity is completely denatured and gone, which gave us an understanding of why none of the commercial products carried the same immune response that the plant had earned its reputation for centuries. And so for the first time, we had stabilized ace-mannin. The pharmacologist that discovered that filed and received over 150 patents worldwide on this incredible immune modulating technology. They first brought it to market in topical wound care modalities. They second got it approved as an immunostimulant in veterinary medicine for the effective treatment of tumors, cancers, leukemias. But for human consumption, its best application was orally through dietary supplementation. Because the mechanism of action of ace-mannin is it activates a large white blood cell in your body called a macrophage. And macrophages orchestrate all of the immunomodulatory functions in human physiology. In other words, it turns your immune system on and makes it work appropriately. And so swallowing ace-mannin was the most effective strategy for impacting human health. So we did that through dietary supplementation. In 1994, I licensed the first stabilized ace-mannin product for nutritional intervention. And we brought it into the marketplace. And over the next 20 years, we sold over $3 billion worth of products containing ace-mannin in over 26 countries around the world. But something happened to me during that process that changed the direction of my life forever, and it's what brought me here today. And that is that in 1997, my wife and I adopted all of our children from around the world. And we were in Romania working with an adoption organization and listening to their presentation of what was going on with their children. And at the end of the presentation, the caregiver said, "It's devastating to see what's happening with our children. They're sick all the time. we lose 30 to 40 kids a year to immunodeficient related diseases. So what happens with children around the world is when they're malnourished, they suffer from a condition called immunodeficiency. In other words, their immune systems become suppressed, and they can no longer protect themselves from chronic or infectious disease. Over 6 million children a year die of immunodeficiency related issues in the world today. Well, I'm sitting here with this incredible technology as the business that I do, and I offered to send her some of this Ace Mannin. It comes in a powdered form, and all they had to do is blend it in their food, which they did. And at the end of the year, we reconnected, and she told me that for the first time in years, their kids were healthy, and then for the first time in over a decade, not one child died in their organization through that intervention. Listen, as a business person, I've been rewarded in business every way that you can imagine. But nothing has ever been fulfilling is knowing that what I was good and gifted at doing, which is business, could be directly connected to what I was most passionate about doing, which is impacting the lives of vulnerable children. And so we came back to America and started a not-for-profit organization called Manna Relief. And we started looking for key distribution partners around the world who could help us take Ace Mannin and distribute it to medically fragile children in all parts of the world. And our distribution partners in Latin America are sitting right here on the front row, President Fox and his wife Marta. Over the last 9 years, they have helped us impact the lives of literally thousands of children here in Mexico, and we're just getting started. Okay, that brings me to my final slide, which is innovation in nutritional intervention. So we've taken the best of the science that we've learned through hemp oil science. We know that broad spectrum hemp oil without THC. We know that nanostructures that have been emulsified increase bioavailability. We know that combining that composition with Ace Mannin produces a technology that radically impacts the way that people's defense mechanisms and recovery mechanisms actually work. And it's the most effective integrative strategy for addressing poor health conditions that I think we've ever seen in the scientific community. We actually filed patents on this composition a couple of weeks ago, and we just launched it. And what we're seeing in America is just a tremendous response to this new composition. And so that's innovation in nutritional science. How do you take the best science of cannabis? How do you take the best science in aloe vera? How do you combine them together into a symbiotic format or platform that we call Entourage Squared? In other words, how do you multiply the incredible benefits of hemp and hemp oil? The way you do that is by combining it with Ace Mannin. That's what you call innovation, and that's what we're doing today. Listen, just to close this out, I want to thank everybody for coming and listening to our story today. We are very excited about doing work in Mexico. One of the reasons is because we process our Ace Mannin technology right here in Mexico. And we look forward to the day when we can process the best technologies in hemp with the best technologies in Ace Mannin and go out there and change the world. Thank you very much, and blessings to everyone.